Hey, it's Alex from BoardGameCo, and today we are doing Should You Play It with Barenpark. In Should You Play It, I pick a game, I do a brief overview of the game, and then I go into 5 reasons why it might be a good game for you, or 5 reasons why it might not be a good game for you. Is this a fit? Is this something you are interested in? Or should you pass this one by and head on to the next one? Now, Barenpark, at its core, is a polyomino game, which basically just means we have these various tiles on the board that you'll be taking various polyomino Tetris-y shapes and trying to align them together until you can perfectly set up a board in a sequence of tiles that, well, rewards you in some way or another. Now, polyomino games do have different objectives depending on the game you are playing. Some polyomino games really just want you to fill the entire space, whereas other polyomino games have more targeted objectives of how and where you will score points. In Barenpark, it's really the former. In Barenpark, you are ultimately trying to fill your entire board. Throughout the course of the game, you're going to start with one basic map tile that's going to, be your starting board. And then from there, you will add more map tiles to your board until you have 4 of these tiles in whatever pattern you want. It could be a grid. It could be a straight line, however you want to do so. And then from there, on your turn, you are basically going to take a tile from the main board, such as one of these. You will then place it on your map tile, and then any symbols you cover will determine what additional tiles you get to add to your stock. So for instance, if I cover over here this excavator along with this greenery tile, I will take one excavator tile along with one greenery tile, and then those I now have available for next turn. Now next turn I don't get to place both of those. I still only get to place one tile per turn, but throughout the course of the game you will hopefully build up a bit of a backlog. And that backlog means that sometimes you may not get a new tile in a turn, but now thankfully because you have a backlog, you have the flexibility to still place out a tile even if it doesn't give you something back, because sometimes it won't. Now some of the spaces you cover, such as this little construction worker crew over here, will add a new tile to your board, at least until you have 4, possibly 5 with one of the expansion modules, but then from there that's basically it. After that, you have all these criteria you're trying to achieve, and there's different ways you're going to score points. You will score points for the number on each tile, which some of the tiles don't have numbers and therefore don't score points, but most of the tiles do have numbers and will score you points. You will additionally score points every time you complete a grid. One of these tiles, every time you complete one, except for this little spot in the corner, you will then be able to take a beer statue, put that on, that will be worth a certain number of points. And that's basically, well, one more thing, almost forgot. We have these over here. These are various objective tiles. Every game you'll take 3 of these. You don't have to, it's a variant, but it's a variant I highly recommend. I would never play it without. Perhaps with kids, I guess. We'll see. But anyways, you take some of these. You pick 3 of them from the giant stock of different options, and they have different criteria. Maybe you need to line up 3 rivers. Maybe you need to be the first person to take 3 excavator tiles or whatnot. And then from there you'll score additional points. That is a high-level overview. Ultimately, it is a simple game. Place a tile, hopefully take more stuff, continue placing tiles until you have completed your board. The first person to complete the board will trigger one last turn for everyone else, and that's it. That's the game. So, should you play it? To begin with, number 1, this game has amazing art. This art is by Clemens Franz. It is art that you've seen in Agricola, Le Havre, the whole host of other games that I'm not recalling offhand right now, but Clemens Franz is one of the more popular artists out there in the board game space, and there is a reason why. His art is engaging, it is endearing, it pulls you in, and often what's interesting is his art is usually on heavy games, which is a bit of a disconnect. You see this slightly cartoony feel that makes you feel it'll be more accessible, and it isn't. Still great games, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of until you learn to experience that, you might think you could pull Agricola off the shelf, you can pull Caverna Le Havre off the shelf, and it might look like a more accessible, appealing game, and they aren't. Versus Barenpark is. Barenpark does match the artwork, and this art will pull you in, and it is perfectly suited for this game. Reason number 2 is setup and tear down on this game is a breeze. Setting this game up is pretty much, 3-4 minutes tops. There's a little bit of an adjustment you might have to make for the variable player counts, but once you have that down, you throw this whole thing on the table, start stacking piles. You can have this thing going in 3 to 4 minutes, faster if you have other players helping you out put the tiles out. And tear down is pretty similar. Just dump all the tiles, put them out, and just dump them into the bags, and you're good to go. The setup and tear down on this game is very accessible, perhaps not compared to, a game like No Thanks or For Sale or lighter games, but for what you have here, it is a decent setup and tear down time. Number 3 is the playtime matches the experience. What I mean by that is I don't mind long games, I don't mind short games, I don't mind heavy games or light games, but I am always a fan of when the playtime of a game matches the experience provided. And in Barenpark, that is definitely true here. This game can clock in at 30 to 45 minutes, a little over if you're playing with a full player count and perhaps a little slower players, and it perfectly matches the experience that I am getting out of it. If it were shorter, I would probably want it to be longer, and if it were longer, I'd probably feel it's a bit too long for the gameplay it provides. I feel Barenpark provides the perfect amount of playtime for the experience it is giving you. Reason number 4 is the expansion. I love the expansion. I highly recommend it. You should 100% get this, and we'll come back to that. But the expansion adds a bunch of modules, different modules that will adjust the gameplay experience in a way that if this game were getting a little bit old or stale for you, then the expansion will flesh that out. The expansion will add different modules, it'll add new beers, it'll add a monorail, it adds a 5th board. There are a bunch of things this game adds that, it brings life, it breathes life into a perhaps slightly stale experience, and we'll get back to that. Reason number 5 is that and this is ultimately the big one. This is the reason why I like this game. The first 4 reasons are fluff, essentially. This 5th reason is the main reason why I think Barenpark is an excellent game that should be in everyone's collection. Although, again, we haven't gotten to the why it might not be a game for you. But reason number 5 is this game is simple enough for 5-year-olds and rewarding enough for adults. Now, I talked about this, I listed this game as one of my favorite games when I did a video on games that are fun to play with kids too. Games that are fun for kids and adults as well. And I should note, when I say 5-year-olds, my 5-year-old plays this and enjoys this. Obviously, he is not playing it at the same level or understanding that we are, but he is putting out tiles and having fun. He may not be playing strategically, but he is enjoying the experience and he understands the rule set, along with myself and my older kids who then understand the rule set and are actually playing the game. So 5-year-olds take that with a grain of salt, but that is I think it delivers an experience that any 5-year-old could have fun, just placing out tiles and trying to make them match up. Who cares about the rules being something that they are interested in or not? But this game, like I said, it is great for kids, it is great for adults. I can play this with my 5-year-old, my 7-year-old, my 8-year-old, or whoever, I don't even know their ages anymore. But I can play it with them, and it will be thoroughly enjoyable for them. They will enjoy it a lot. I can also play it with gateway gamers, people who are perhaps not really that into the hobby, don't necessarily know the ins and outs, which games they like or don't like, and they just show up at my table, and I'm like, you know what? Let's play Barenpark. That'll be a fun experience, and it's great for them as well. And I can play it with my game group. I can play it with my game group, and it will again be something that I enjoy. Is it providing the strategic depth of insert your heaviest game here? Of course not. It is of course not providing the depth of any of Spirit Island, of Robinson Crusoe, of Bruges. It's not providing that kind of experience, but it doesn't have to. There are so many different experiences you can get out of games, and this is one of my favorite polyomino games, and it's specifically because of that wide breadth of the experience it can deliver. It can be enjoyable for kids, it can be enjoyable for gateway gamers, it can be enjoyable for strategic heavy gamers. It is just fun wrapped into a box. Which brings us from all that hype, from all that buzz, let's bring it down to the reasons why it might not be a game for you. And reason number 1 is this really just feeds off the last one, which is it's light. It is a light game. Despite the fact that I enjoy it, despite the fact that I can play it with a variety of player counts, this is no brain burner of a game. If you typically don't enjoy lighter games, despite all the reasons why I might like something light, despite the reason why I, after game night, might be happy to pull out the Mind and play it, or No Thanks and play it, maybe you don't. Maybe you only enjoy brain burners. Maybe that's something that this just won't appeal to you because this is not a brain burner. This is a simple, fun game, and if that's not up your alley, then I would probably pass on this game. This is not going to do anything different that a million other lighter fun games haven't done for you before. Reason number 2 is ultimately, and this is a little bit of a pet peeve for me in the strategic depth of the experience, but not the enjoyment of the experience, but ultimately the game can sometimes feel like it's just a bunch of number countdowns that don't really matter. Now what I mean by that is so many of the tiles you get in the game have a countdown. This first one is going to be 8, this next one's going to be 7, this next one's going to be 6. The points on the tiles are going to slowly decrease in numeric order, and that's true of the various statues you will add to your park, and that's true of the monorail expansion, meaning ultimately there's so many different points that that are being given, and they will slowly but surely decrease in point value, so that you just try to go for these stacks first. And to a certain degree, it can sort of feel like it doesn't really matter. You're just going for whatever has the highest points and trying to make that fit, and it's just going to be a bit of a countdown until someone just adds up their numbers and scores the most points. And sometimes that mathy annoyingness, countdownness can feel like it's just play it out and figure out what the game ends with or whatnot. Reason number 3 is the end game scoring, and this feeds off what I just said a second ago. The end game scoring, despite the fact that the setup and teardown are actually pretty easy, the end game scoring is a little bit annoying, and it's out of whack with the experience being delivered. Now, what I mean by that is, at the end of the game, at the end of this light, simple, easy game that is easy to set up, easy to play, easy to tear down, but right before you tear down, you have to start counting up numbers on everyone's board. It is just literally a counting process. 8 plus 14 plus 12 plus 15 plus 19, and then add these 4 bonus points, and you do that again and again, all the way up to scores upwards of 100 on possibly 4 different players' boards. It's not a pain. It's not the end of the world. Lots of games have far more complicated scoring, but it is out of alignment with the experience that this game is providing. The amount of counting at the end of the game is, again, not the worst, but out of alignment with what this game is otherwise presenting, and that can be a little annoying, honestly. Reason number 4 is this game can definitely feel very samey after multiple plays. The experience, while fun, while engaging, while light and accessible and airy and breezy, for adults at least, not for kids. Kids will play this hours on end, but for adults at least, I find this game feels samey after even 4 or 5 plays. It just feels like you've played out the basic game, and it's, you know, more of the same, and still fun, still okay, but it does have a slowly decreasing level of enjoyment the more you play this game. Now, the expansion, which I do highly recommend, does help with that, but if you are just getting the base game, understand that experience will slowly, you know, decrease in how much fun it is, because there's not a ton of variability. These endgame scoring goals are the only variability you really have in the game, that each scoring goal will be slightly different and slightly adjust how you build your park out, because maybe you need to build more rivers this game. Maybe you need to, you know, lay out your board this way, or build the 3 panda tiles first. There's different criteria that will slightly adjust the way you play, but not significantly enough to be a drastically different or rewarding experience. And that is something to take into account before you get Barenpark. And lastly, reason number 5, and this one I was nitpicking for this one, but still it is true, which is the expansion does not fit in the base game box because of the stupid monorails. I'm sorry, I love the monorails, I do, but the way the monorails play out is they take up a lot of space because you have to construct these little monorails. They are visually engaging. I love having them on the board, but it means I have to keep a whole separate box for the monorails. And additionally, and this is less of a nitpicky, the monorails, I think, kind of are essential in the game. I haven't played the expansion enough times to say this with certainty, but every time I've played the expansion with the monorails, it kind of feels like when they're in the game, they are basically essential to the strategy because of how many points they give you. Meaning you can't mix it up as much as you could have in the base game of, I'm going to go for the scoring goals, I'm going to go for these tiles or the excavator tiles, but in the expansion, because the monorails start off at 10 points each, you kind of have to build up the monorails, because if you don't and someone else does, it does seem like they will win and you won't have a chance. And that's it. Those are my 5 reasons why it might be for you, why it might not be for you. Just once again, quickly, it has amazing art. The setup and teardown is a breeze. The playtime matches the experience. The expansion adds a lot of variability to the game. And lastly, it is a great game for a wide variety of player counts. And as far as what might not be for you, it is light. That is something you can't stop. It's a light game. Ultimately, the game can feel very mathy, very numbery. The end game scoring is annoying, specifically because of that. It's just a bunch of numbers and you have to add them all up. The game can feel samey and get a little bit dry after multiple plays, not providing enough of a different experience, which the expansion does help with. And lastly, the expansion, while it does help with that, is annoying because it really needs its own box, and the monorails in that expansion are almost essential to the gameplay. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found that somewhat useful. For myself, I do highly recommend Barenpark. I think it is a great game that this is the first game that I always recommend to someone who's getting into games and they want a game for their family, for everyone to enjoy, for different ages of kids. This is the one I pick, and I have yet to have that fail. Every time I've recommended it, the people have enjoyed it. But keep in mind, I am recommending it to families with kids, and I don't think I've ever recommended Barenpark to a heavy strategy gamer in and of itself. I think if you don't have a reason to be playing lighter games, if you don't have a reason to be playing out a game with your family or for friends who aren't playing games, then I think Barenpark's just okay. It's good, I enjoy it, but it's probably just okay. If your game group is just interested in the heaviest of the heavy, perhaps something else instead. But otherwise, I do recommend Barenpark. I hope you pick it up, and I hope you enjoy it. Until next time, I am Alex from BoardGameCo. I hope you enjoyed this Should You Play It video. I will be trying to do more of these. Sadly, I find reviews don't get the same level of attention as Kickstarter projects on this channel. That being said, I do love some games, and I'm going to let you know about them. Until next time, have a good one.